series of Drishti IAS. My name is Pooja Devedi. Today we are going to do a comparative study of China and India's population, as well as why is China's population declining. Other than that, what are the concerns related that is concerning to the Chinese government, and how India is opportune at this particular moment given the demographic dividend. So everything will be discussed in brief. From the perspective of your examination, it is important that you follow this from the perspective of prelims as well as JS mains paper second and third. So these are the many topics that we are going to discuss step by step. First of all, the news says that China has recorded its first population decline in decades, and this is a sea change according to some experts for a country which is looking to expand its economic prospects, and this is the concern right now, the broad concern. As according to Statista, you can see the population of different countries. India is said to overtake China when it comes to population. Then China might become the second most populous country soon. After that, we have USA, Indonesia, Pakistan. This is a comparison between the years 2003 to 2023. So you can see the change over here. Then we have Indonesia, Pakistan, Nigeria, Brazil, Bangladesh, and the rest. All right, moving on. Now, if we talk about the findings of the current report, which has shown this result, the National Bureau of Statistics of China has showed out certain results that the population of mainland China, the mainland China, which is the neighbor of many countries such as India as well. We're not talking about Hong Kong and etc. We're talking about mainland China. Was 1.411 billion people at the end of 2022. It is a decrease of 8,50,000 over the previous year. It marks the first drop since 1961. So in decades, China has registered the degrowth in population. China's birth rate, or the number of newborns per 1,000 people, it declined to 6.77 last year, and it is at the lowest level since 1978. This report also shows us that 62% of the population were of working age, which China defines people who are aged between 16 to 59, and it has come down from around 70% a decade ago. So you can see that when population declines, the people in workforce will also decline. What are the reasons for it? See, China followed a very stringent one-child policy in order to control its population. Back then, nobody thought that China would be one of those countries where population might decline. So some 9.6 million babies were born in 2022, down from 10.62 million a year earlier, and it is the lowest level since 1950. Moving ahead, the reason is the difference between the death rate and the birth rate. If more people are dying than those who are getting born, then what happens? That the birth rate starts declining. All right, so this is one of the reasons, and this could also be attributed in the recent times to COVID-19 related death and low number of newborns being conceived. Low number of newborns being here. So a total of 10.41 million people died because of COVID-19. China suffered a surge in COVID-related deaths since last month when it curbed or relaxed its zero COVID policy, and because of that, infections are also increasing. So now when infections increase, there is a lag between the infection rate and the death. So what happens that in the upcoming months, we can of course have this unfortunate news that China will also register more deaths. So one China policy was relaxed in the year 2016, and this was replaced with two baby policy. But people did not have any urge to create more than one baby, and they attributed to the high cost of living, other costs such as education, loan costs, everything they take into account, and then they decide either they will have a one child or none at all. So in 2021, the limit of having babies in China was raised to 3. And the Chinese government, like the South Korean and Japanese government, is facing similar crunch in population. So it is giving cash handouts in order to incentivize people to procreate. Also tax cuts and even property concessions they are giving so that they can have more children. So government has got this idea that people are not doing it because of financial issues, but there are also many cultural globalization issues that people are choosing to be childless or having only one child. So the population drop-off came much faster than previously expected. It was not expected earlier that China would see a decline in its population so soon. And because of this, the economic growth will be having a lot of impact, because it is important that in order to create demand, we need people. If there will be no people, there will not be a lot of demand, either for goods and commodities or for having more homes or anything else. Other than that, the government will also be burdened with pension schemes, so that, because what will happen now, more and more people will get old, lesser people will be there to earn and pay taxes. So the government will not have a significant revenue to pay the pensions to the old age people. So these are all the issues. So as recently as 2019, the United Nations forecasted that China's population would peak in 2031 and then decline. But now we can see that it happened in 2022 only. The labor force is already shrinking, and it is expected to shrink now in the next few months and years as well. Long-term demand for houses will also fall further, and the government may also struggle to pay for the underfunded national pension system, similarly like we have in Japan or South Korea. So the crude death rate, which is the number of people die per thousand per year, it was 23.2 for China and 22.2 for India in the year 1950, and it fell to a single digit for China first in 1974 to 9.5. For India, it was in 1994, it was 9.8, then to 7.3 and 7.4 for both in 2020. So the death rate came low. Between 1950 and 2020, life expectancy at birth, it went up from 43.7 to 78.1 years for China, and from 41.7 to 70.1 years for India. So there were more people on the earth if we compare these two countries from different timelines. The total fertility rate was as high as 5.8 for China and 5.7 for India in 1950. Total fertility rate can be defined as the number of you can say babies a woman will produce in her lifetime. So what happens that generally a proper birth rate could total fertility rate is 2.1. This is the ideal one. That means that what happens when a person dies, and we are also going to discuss the replacement theory over here. So let me talk about that only. So the TFR has fallen sharply for India in the past 3 decades. That could be attributed to education. Also, now more and more women are choosing to marry at a later age, and that also has an impact on their fertility. Other than that, the cost of living and the other things that are responsible for population decline in China similarly can be seen for India. So between 1992 and 1993 and 2019 and 21, it came down from 3.4 to 2, and the fall was especially significant in the rural areas. This is because agriculture can be attributed to education, proliferation of education. The agricultural lands are becoming smaller and smaller, and that is why not a lot of revenue is there. So then what happens, families are choosing to be nuclear in nature. Other than that, it can also be seen that earlier in rural areas, children were considered important to work in the agricultural sector, and now the agricultural sector is not very intriguing, and that is why it might be possible that that is also a reason that people are not choosing to have a lot of children in the villages. So the TFR of 2.1 is idealistic. This is the replacement level fertility, which I told you. What happens, that replacement level fertility means how many babies does a woman need to replace her and her partner when they both die. So to replace them. So generally it is considered 2.1. Why? It is above 2. Why? Because sometimes it can also happen that all the children might not survive. So 2.1 is idealistic, but India is now at 2. TFR is at 2. So every woman is producing 2 children in order to replace her and her partner. So populations can keep growing even if TFRs are falling like India. And degrowth actually requires TFRs to remain below the replacement level for an extended period of time. So let us see if India can sustain this to the level it has right now. So how has China's TFR finally shrunk? So what we can see is China's TFR dipped below replacement. First in the year 1991, the crude death rate declined below 10 to, it happened 2 decades earlier for China if we compare it to India. China's population more than doubled from 544 million in 1950 to 1.1 billion in 1987 and peaked in 2021. It took over 30 years for below replacement fertility rate to translate into negative population growth, and this is the reason that TFR for China has finally shrunk. And as you can see, the percentage share of population aged 20 to 59, how much India has and how much China has right now. So it is declining for China. All right. Now let's move on and talk about India's opportunity right now. We have demographic dividend. I just hope that you know this term. Demographic dividend is something when you are able to capitalize upon the humongous young population that a country has. So in order for that, we need more employment, investment opportunities, more startups, more businesses to be created. So all these are factors that are responsible for any country to convert their huge population into demographic dividend. But sometimes it can also become demographic doom. If it's an explosion, when you're not able to capitalize upon your youth, you are not having that much of employment opportunities or jobs in your country, then you can outsource, then you can send your human resources to other countries. So every other country might now see India as a country with demographic dividend. So they might want to invest and open their factories in India so that they can capitalize upon the huge young market that we have right now. So India has just begun seeing fertility rates fall to replacement level, and rural areas, because of spread of education, we are seeing that India's population is further projected to expand and degrow only after touching 1.7 billion, and that is about 40 years from now. And we have a huge working age population, and its share in the overall population crossed 50% only in the year 2007. So it is still very early on, and it will peak at 57% towards the mid 2030s. So that is why it is opportune for India. And now let me take the names of those who have answered my last question correctly with respect to Venus. I think it was Shukriyan. Yes, it was. So many of you have answered both my questions. Devendra has answered Venus, correct. Rupal has answered both the questions, very good. Then Unstoppable has answered it correctly. Vikas. Then Divyanshu as well, very good. Keshika. Suraj, Aarti, Chenna, Magical Motivation, Jyoti, Savita, Monica, Apurva, Simran, very good. Archana, Sheikh, Tosif, Ramakrishna, then Akhil and Vaishnavi, very good. Then Bhargavi, Sachin, Rishabh, other than them. Tanu has answered the myths question, that is correct, very good. Also Chandra, then Tushar Nigam, also A to B, very good. Guru Prasad, Anuj Singh, very good. Sagarika, very good. Anita, Koyal, very good. Also Tushita, Rajaram, Srinivas, very good for answering both the questions. Then God S Love, S2, not that one. Anushri, very good, and Tanu. So answer the current question which I have attached in the comment segment for the announcement of your names. That's it. Thank you so much for watching.